Episode number 334. The cardinal looked, then, with great impatience for the news from England, which would announce to him that Buckingham would not come. The question of carrying the city by assault, though often debated in the council of the king, had been always rejected. In the first place, La Rochelle appeared impregnable. Then the cardinal, whatever he said, very well knew that the horror of bloodshed in this encounter, in which Frenchmen would combat against Frenchmen, was a retrograde movement of 60 years impressed upon his policy, and the cardinal was at that period what we now call a man of progress. In fact, the sack of La Rochelle, and the assassination of 3 or 4,000 Huguenots, who allowed themselves to be killed, would resemble too closely, in 1628, the massacre of St. Bartholomew in 1572, and then, above all this extreme measure, which was not at all repugnant to the king, good Catholic as he was, always fell before this argument of the besieging generals, La Rochelle is impregnable except to famine. The cardinal could not drive from his mind the fear entertained of his terrible emissary, for he comprehended the strange qualities of this woman, sometimes a serpent, sometimes a lion. Had she betrayed him? Was she dead? He knew her well enough in all cases to know that, whether acting for or against him, as a friend or an enemy, she would not remain motionless without great impediments. But whence did these impediments arise? That was what he could not know. And yet he reckoned, and with reason, on milady. He had divined in the past of this woman terrible things, which his red mantle alone could cover, and he felt, from one cause or another, that this woman was his own, as she could look to no other, but himself for a support superior to the danger which threatened her. He resolved, then, to carry on the war alone, and to look for no success for unto himself, but as we look for a fortunate chance. He continued to press the raising of the famous dike, which was to starve La Rochelle. Meanwhile, he cast his eyes over that unfortunate city, which contained so much deep misery, and so many heroic virtues, and recalling the saying of Louis Roman XI, his political predecessor, as himself was the predecessor of Robespierre, he repeated this maxim of Tristan's gossip: divide in order to reign. Henry Roman IV, when besieging Paris, had loaves and provisions thrown over the walls. The cardinal had little notes thrown over, in which he represented to the Rothschild how unjust, selfish, and barbarous was the conduct of the leaders. These leaders had corn in abundance, and would not let them partake of it. They adopted as a maxim, for they, too, had maxims, that it was of very little consequence that women, children, and old men should die, so long as the men who were to defend the walls remained strong and healthy. Up to that time, whether from devotedness or from want of power to act against it, this maxim, without being generally adopted, nevertheless passed from theory into practice. But the notes did it injury. The notes reminded the men that the children, women, and old men whom they allowed to die were their sons, their wives, and their fathers, and that it would be more just for everyone to be reduced to the common misery, in order that equal conditions should give birth to unanimous resolutions.